Welcome to South Seattle College's second of 3 presidential candidate open forums. I am Bob Delacruz, English instructor and co-chair of the Presidential Search Committee. Thank you for attending the forum. I just want you to be aware that this forum is being live streamed and then will be taped, so be aware of that. And the fact that you're here, that's nice. And also for the people who are watching on their computers and so forth. Because it's very important what we're doing today. It's our opportunity to get to know the candidate and also for the candidate to get to know us. So let me just give you some of the procedures. I'm going to give an introduction to our candidate, Dr. Chemene Crawford. She will then say a few words, and then we'll have the question and answer period. But instead of just a question and answer, I'd like us to try as much as possible to have more of a conversation, a dialogue, in terms of give and take and that type of thing. The forum is 1 hour from 1:30 until 2:30. But we have extended it by 30 minutes, and those 30 minutes from 2:30 to 3 o'clock, then that time will be given exclusively to students so that they can answer student-specific questions. We need your input. So all of your input is anonymous, and you should have been given, or at least had access to a paper comment form. And you can fill that out, and if you're finished with it at the end of the forum, when you leave, there's a box, and you can just go ahead and put it there. If you need more time to fill the form, please take that time, and then just go ahead, put it in a sealed envelope, and then bring it to the president's office, and then we'll put it in the box there. And we also have an online comment form. So again, later you can look at the taped interview, then you can make your comments online, and once again, it is anonymous. The live stream, you can access it through the SCC TV website. It's www.scctv.net. So let's go ahead and begin. You've heard this a few times.
I have.
No. So Dr. Crawford is a college administrator, instructor, trainer, and leader. For over 30 years, Dr. Crawford has served as an educational administrator, instructor, and consultant. After a national search, Dr. Crawford joined the Centro College leadership team as the Vice President of Student Services and Enrollment Management. Centro College is part of the Dallas County Community College District. Previously, Dr. Crawford served as Vice President of Student Affairs, Vice President of Administrative Operations, Dean of Student Affairs, and Director of Student Financial Services for the College of Southern Nevada in Las Vegas, Nevada. She also worked for approximately 10 years in the California Community College system. Dr. Crawford has also authored a study of California's chief executive officers and conducted research on the development of 4-year degree programs at community colleges, which was the topic of her doctoral dissertation. Dr. Crawford has served as a full-time faculty member of the Western Governors University and as an adjunct faculty member for the University of North Texas at Dallas, University of Phoenix, Nevada State College, and College of Southern Nevada. Her academic accomplishments include a Doctor of Education degree in Organizational Leadership from Nova Southeastern University, a master's degree in Human Resources and Organization Development, and a Bachelor of Science degree in Organizational Behavior, both from the University of San Francisco. Dr. Crawford has served on many local, regional, and national committees and association boards for student advocacy. She has received numerous professional awards and is recognized as a leader within the higher education community. Most recently, Dr. Crawford was selected as the National Association of Student Personnel Administrators, NASPA, Region 3, Outstanding Community College Professional for 2016. Dr. Crawford is also included in previous publications of Who's Who in Black Las Vegas. She currently serves as the president of for the Southern Region of the National Council on Black American Affairs, and is also the president-elect for the national board of that organization. Dr. Crawford's purpose in life is to live life to the fullest and to encourage others to do the same by being the best that they can be. Dr. Crawford.
Thank you so much. I always say that is just so hard to listen to, but it kind of wears you out just a little bit. But thank you so much for having me here. I'm excited to be here. I had a chance to walk the campus this morning. Beautiful, students are friendly. There's just so much going on here that's so similar to what we're dealing with in Dallas and what I've dealt with in the past. I'm looking forward to your questions. Just you heard most of my bio for the most part, but I would like to think that I'm a very student-centered person. So the conversations that we've had earlier, my comments have always been, well, what about the students? What about the students? And we recognize that if we don't have students, we don't have jobs. So it's important for us to be a teaching and learning college, which you all have declared that you will be and that you are. And that means that we stay innovative and that we're on the cutting edge in many ways and that we're willing to think outside of the traditional box in order to make sure that the students get what we need and that the college maintains viability. So, on that note, question?
We'll go into...
I'll share more along the way, prompted by you.
So we'll now go into the question and answer period. The way it will work is we have, I think, a couple of wireless microphones that will pass around. So just raise your hand, and then we'll get a microphone to you. And we ask that you use the microphones because, again, we're live streaming it. Yes? Oh, wait, but see, I'm up here, so I'm the MC. I'm already here, so I get to ask the first question. South Seattle College consists of hardworking but also fun-loving students, faculty, staff, administrators, and community partners. We consider ourselves a family. We are proud of our college, its culture, and our accomplishments. So please, Dr. Crawford, could you tell us what attracted you to South most? Why do you want to come here?
Well, thank you. I shared with the group this morning that I am not that person that just absolutely has to be president at any cost. I really gave it a lot of thought. I always look at the college to see if there's anything in my skill set and that are part of my strong suits that can help benefit the college and move it forward. If I cannot be useful in an environment, then why add myself to the conversation? And so understanding many of the things that you're going through, looking at the programs that you have, looking at your community involvement in campuses, it just seemed like a really good fit, and so I decided to apply. So know that I'm not that person out there who is at any cost just throwing applications out there. I really do give it quite a bit of thought because this is service. And I said this over and over again. And so it's a matter of where you choose to serve. I don't care whether you are on the front line or whether you're the president of the college. All of this work is service. You know, your faculty serve when they teach. And, you know, administrators, when they're administrators, we teach in some way and we are serving this college community. And so I always keep my focus on that. And I truly believe that. And so I'm thinking, okay, is this a good college community where my work can help move things forward? And so I absolutely thought it was, and I still do. There's a lot of work that you all are doing. There's a lot that can be done, and much of which I've had experience with, from budget, from even guided pathways, teaching, all of that. And I know that I have the skill set that could benefit this organization. So this is an exciting opportunity.
Dr. Crawford.
Yes,
Welcome to South.
thank you.
I coordinate my name is Larry Reed, and I coordinate the college's accreditation activities. We're up for our Year 7 comprehensive accreditation evaluation a year from now. Wondering if you could share with us your background, your experience with accreditation.
Well, interestingly enough, I've always been either a co-chair of an accreditation team as far as the campus is concerned. We are approaching our 5th year review. We're part of SACS. And so everybody's in a scramble, which is unfortunate. When it comes to accreditation time, you shouldn't be in a scramble. But I have worked on teams through substantive change at the College of Southern Nevada. We sought accreditation to offer a baccalaureate degree, and we survived that. And at the time, I was Dean of Student Affairs, so there were several areas within Student Affairs I oversaw, and that, of course, affected that process. And at my current college, I work very closely with the Dean of Accreditation. We actually have a Dean of Accreditation because, again, being in charge of Student Affairs and enrollment management, all of that touches some particular area, whether it be academics. We've opened a New Zealand hygiene program, so we've had to go through reviews for those kinds of things. Allied health, as you know, there are different levels of approvals for that, and that all gets tossed in with reaccreditation. And so it's always been a team effort, if you will, but unfortunately, I understand the accreditation process and have been a part of it in some way, especially being Director of Student Financial Services at a very large college, which was College of Southern Nevada, 44,000 students. You can't touch a dollar without being part of the accreditation process in some way. So, absolutely.
Dr. Crawford, hello. My name is Joyce Allen, the Dean of Enrollment Services. And let's say you get this job and you come in and then you lift up the carpet and you see there's a little dirt here, a little dirt there, and there's some really clean spaces. There's something that needs to change because you're going to find things that do need to change. How do you approach change? And what's an example of something that you've had to address that is a change process that you could share with us by way of example?
Well, formally, that master's degree that he talked about is in human resources and organization development, and the focus for that was to be a change consultant in the private sector. So the bachelor's and master's are more private sector oriented, and so we were trained to do that. So translate that into higher education, and I will work now, present backwards. When I showed up at Centro College, I was a little surprised. Not only was I told that the president who hired me was retiring in 8 months, but that student development needed to be reorganized because they had significant problems. And these were long-standing problems. El Centro College is the flagship of the Dallas district. It's 50 years old as of last year, and there are some employees who have been there for 40 and 45 of those years. And so, for whatever reasons, many of the personnel issues were not managed. And when you're talking student development, that is a direct correlation to students. So when you have a level of dysfunction that includes one set of employees not speaking to another set of employees, literally, we have a problem. And also when you don't have upward mobility for employees, passion only goes so far. And I have to say that many of my employees are very passionate about what they do and they love that college, but that only goes so far. So I walked into a hornet's nest, basically. And I was given the latitude by the current president to do what I need to do. Now, I am not that person that comes in and automatically thinks, oh, just cut the problem out. Just cut it out and we'll start again. That's not what I do, because I truly believe that, you know, people can be saved and all of that, but, you know, it's work. These are jobs. This is student development. it's worth taking the time to find out the root of the problem and come up with creative ways to not only organize the division to where they're collaborative, but where the students are getting the services that they deserve and that they are there and that they need to be successful. So I went through every job description. I met with every employee, and mind you, right now I have about 162 employees. So I probably talked to about 80 people, to be honest with you. Had SWOT analysis done. Matter of fact, I made them do a SWOT analysis because I wanted to find out where they were coming from and what vision they had for what they do. And I also wanted to find out where my stars were. Okay? And when you're in an environment where you really can't talk to another person about anything because they report to your enemy, and that's the way things are structured, that's a problem as well. So how do you figure out where your stars are? And so it took me, I'd say, about 90 days to do all of this, day and night. It wasn't an 8 to 5 job. And I consulted with the president and drew some conclusions. And he nodded his head and he said, and I was sure that those were the conclusions that you were going to come to. But because he had long-standing history with the college, he felt as though the decision would be considered subjective. I, on the other hand, I didn't know any of these people. So I was making a decision based on the facts. So we managed to, I admit I did have to cut 2 people. However, once that happened, employees blossomed. Productivity was up. Morale was up. I had to have some courageous conversations with people. We talked about performance and, trying to salvage 2 of those employees, and it was just not something that was going to happen. And it worked out well. We gave the 2 employees the support that they needed, made sure retirement-wise they were fine, and did what needed to be done for the greater good, not only for the students, but for the organization. And as I said, people blossomed. I created a structure that provided upward mobility for them. So they had a place to go. They could grow into something. And at the same time, the structure was sustainable. Because I'm a firm believer, having worked in higher ed as long as I have, that it's not if a college will have financial problems, it's when a college will have financial problems. We all do. We all ride a roller coaster, especially depending upon, whether it's state funding, local funding, grants or whatever. We all ride the roller coaster because of our economy and many things. And people change, people move, people do all these things, and so we're affected by that. So building a structure that was sustainable, creating upward mobility, and eliminating major problems with as few cuts as possible has really allowed student development and enrollment management at Centro College to blossom. Real quick to the prior experience, College of Southern Nevada. When I was made interim vice president of administrative operations, one of the charges I was given was to quote unquote clean up HR. Because we had a structure in HR to where employees were told that they couldn't participate in college-wide activities as HR because they might slip and reveal information or say something that they shouldn't say. So you had an HR department that was very isolated, and you're at a college with 3 main campuses, 9 rural sites, and 44,000 students, and your HR department can't participate in college activities. That's very problematic. The employees were also told that they could not leave campus for lunch because if something happened off campus, the college could be liable. Okay? All misnomers. So again, I used the same process. I rolled up my sleeves and I dove in. You look at all the jobs, you do campus climate. In the case of HR, I did campus climate. And I was attacked personally and professionally about the approach and some of the outcomes. But it had more to do with 1 or 2 persons versus the global perspective. We had a consultant come in who had evaluated the area previously and found it interesting that we didn't accept any of her recommendations. And So she and I had a conversation, and again, to make sure I'm on point and that I'm being very objective about the process, we did interviews, and I literally had people, my executive assistant, sneaking people up the back stairs because they did not want to be seen speaking to me or the consultant. So you're talking about an environment of intimidation. So that clearly had to change. And so we changed that with as little pain as possible. Very, very little pain. But sometimes when you dive into these things and really look at what's going on, you can remove barriers without major overhaul. And of course, you get buy-in. This is not just in my head. This is based on facts. This is based on buy-in from, whether it be your president, whether it be your executive team, whether it be employees and all of that, and you make those decisions. So a lot of time and effort goes into my change management, but it's worth it in the long run because we are talking about employees, we're talking about lives, and in some cases, like with the Centro case, we're talking student development and the student experience.
Thank you, Dr. Crawford. Dr. Crawford, my name is Stephanie Delaney. I'm the Dean of Academic Programs. I had the privilege of being able to speak with you this morning, and I really appreciated the answer that you gave to a question about your work in guided pathways at the district level. And I wonder if you could share with us that experience of doing guided pathways in a district, and maybe with a particular focus on your approach to communication.
Right. Well, I could have done the GPS cheer, but I won't. That is what we call it, is GPS. And interestingly enough, and I shared this morning, so for those of you who've heard it, just bear with me. I left the room and came back, and all of a sudden I was executive sponsor for the redesign of the student experience. So what does that tell you? Don't leave the room during the meetings for any reason. But the chancellor, it came from the top, Dr. May said, I want DCCCD to be involved in guided pathways. Even though we are 7 independently accredited colleges, we have way too much going on by way of swirling. Just to give you an idea, we have approximately 80 to 85,000 students in Dallas County Community College District. We have determined that 21,000 of those students swirl. And you understand what I mean by swirling? They just take a class anywhere. They'll declare a major at Centro and say that's where they intend to graduate from, and they just swirl all over the place. And we couldn't figure out why. We couldn't figure out what was going on. So they did a study, if you will, for the student experience. And we were basically told, and I'm still confused by this, but I think I get it. We were told that we were really helpful, but not so helpful, and we were really nice, but not so nice. So what does that mean exactly? So what it basically meant was that we're all over the map as a district, and we are not representing the district in a way that is consistent. Many students see us as a district. They don't differentiate. They just know they're taking a class with Dallas County, okay? And we needed to do something about our student experience. Along with that, we had already committed to guided pathways. And we were basically told, this is an initiative we want to take on. Okay, well, we were told, make that happen. You go do that. And the beauty of our current chancellor is that he said, you go do that person and report back. And it's like, yes, I love that. So there were district staff who put together a team, and I said put together, we volunteered, we signed up, we wanted to hear the information. So we showed up, and then we ended up being champions for the Guided Pathways Initiative. Now what that means is we didn't all sit in a room, all 40 of us, I think it's 40 or 50 of us now, because remember, 7 independently accredited colleges with all different personalities. We knew that this work required input from people on the front line, from the deans, students, everyone. I can't tell you how to process an admission form and how to do it better. I can't do that. I can't tell you how to advise a student better. It's been a couple years since I logged in the colleague, so you probably don't want to send a student to me to be advised. So why then would I sit in a room and try to make decisions about those things? So as you know, when you have an inclusive process, it takes time. And it takes a lot of energy. But for an initiative such as this, it is not a project, it's an initiative. You take the time. If it's going to last, you take the time. So we have Task Force 1, which is the faculty piece, the mapping piece. In other words, these folks have taken on the leadership of mapping our pathways. Again, as a district, we have about 48 to 50 maps done. We have another 300 to map. So sitting in a room of administrators, that's not going to happen in my lifetime, okay? So we had better get some help. So along with that faculty core, there are student services persons as well as students involved in the process providing input. Task Force 2, that is the task force team that I'm the executive sponsor for. And as payback for volunteering me while I was out of the room, I dragged 2 district deans into it with me. So there are 3 of us who are leading the redesign of the student experience, which Achieving the Dream just recently told us all that if we're going to do guided pathways, we had better redesign our student experience, or at least evaluate our student experience. And so it's been a huge undertaking. From that, the 3 of us lead task force team leads. We determined through compression planning that the student experience is pretty much broken into 6 or 7 categories, from pre-collegiate to graduation or transition. Okay? We had to come to consensus across the district as to what that means. What is a pre-collegiate phase for a student? We looked at the literature, but we also looked at how we do what we do as a district, which includes looking at our systems, what we can and cannot do. And so this was painstaking work, but it was so worth it because we now have a model that has been shared with the trustees with regards to a student experience that every college in the district has agreed to make sure a student has, depending on the phase that they are in with regards to their student experience. So it doesn't say, and I'm the person in the room with the flag running around saying this, it is not how we will be organized. It is not who will provide them with that experience. Each college has committed to making sure that the student has that experience. They're in a pre-collegiate phase, we will make sure they have the experience. And the reason we have to look at it that way as a district is because each campus is individually resourced. We don't all have the same money. So we don't have the same dollars in our coffer. And so when we were having a discussion as a steering team, and there were folks in there saying, well, we need to be organized the same. That'll alleviate this problem. And I said, and I was trying to insert humor into things because if you can't laugh, then there's a problem. I said, well, then that means that each of you need to be JVing money to El Centro College. And they're like, what are you talking about? Because I'm going to be structured, and I said this, if I'm going to be structured the way some of you are structured, Richland, Eastfield, liberal arts focus, all of this, you owe El Centro lots of money. And they immediately got it. They recognized, okay, so yeah, we're going to steer clear away from being organized the same. We'll just buy into the student experience. It's interesting how that happens. So every now and then I have to remind people that this is not about who will do it. It's about the experience that the student will have. Task Force 3 is about technology. Every task force that's a part of Guided Pathways has to turn in reports monthly as to its progress. Now keep in mind, not only for the student experience are there the 3 chairs, myself and 2 others, but there are all these teams underneath us doing all this planning. So there are, there's probably 50, 60 people, okay? Again, from students, deans, to faculty, all involved in this process. Excuse me. Well, looking at and evaluating the student experience, we recognized that we had technology shortcomings. Imagine that. We use Colleague, and I will leave that right there for those of you who know what Colleague is about. And I'm sure you all are struggling with the legacy system as well. We have customized our system so much, it's not salvageable. So we plan to go out with a bond to buy a new system along with other things. Well, you can imagine the price tag on that, okay? So part of all of our recommendations are to forward the technology needs for all of this that we are proposing, all of this work that's being done. What technology do we need in order to make sure we can slam dunk and get this done, okay? And best serve our students. So we all poured all of our work into this technology piece, our recommendations, I should say. We then forwarded it to Task Force 3, which is the technology task force, and it's chaired by our chief technology officer of the district. He then, and I believe the RFP is still out there, he then put together an RFP, request for proposals, to try and find some people, a bunch of people who can satisfy our requirements. So that's out there right now, okay? And then Task Force 4 is the marketing and the publicity piece of all of this. They are our communication mouthpiece. If you go out on the Dallas County Community College website right now, you will see that the Guided Pathways site has been launched. It was launched April 3rd. And I was so glad to see that because of the work that went into that. It was enough. It's like, just stop, put it out there, and put a comment section saying, if you find an error, if you find a problem, let us know. Because again, you know, we've talked to students, we talked to everyone, please look at this, please look at this. And they did it, and we love the product that we have, but again, this is a work in progress. And so that's where we are. Our enrollment period for fall begins April 17th. That is when students will be able to choose their pathway. We have made it mandatory for our Dallas Promise students. We have a Promise program similar to Tennessee, but we had to go just a little bit farther. They have to be on some pathway. They have to choose a pathway. But then we feel as though we have the infrastructure and the maps available for students to do that. We're building on-ramps and off-ramps for students who jump on a pathway and figure out, this is not for me. How do I get off this ramp or get off this freeway, right? You have to think of all of that. That didn't come out of my head. That didn't come out of the chancellor's head. That didn't come out of the associate vice chancellor's head. That came from everyone being involved and one person saying, but wait a minute. I think it was an advisor. Wait a minute. What happens if a student wants to jump off of the freeway here? How do we do that? Tell me how we do that. And I love it. I can't have all the answers. It's not my job to have all the answers as an administrator. It is my job to make sure that I'm inclusive and that I listen and that everyone listens and that we make some decisions together because this affects everyone and especially our students. And that is supposed to be the point of Guided Pathways, the Guided Pathways initiative, to make sure students can get what they need and get into the workforce and have a living wage. Did that answer your question? I know it was long, but the project's big. The project is big.
We only have one microphone, so we're going to do the best we can.
Hi, can you talk about your involvement with the Promise Scholarship and also about the outcomes that you guys have seen with your Promise Scholarship?
Okay, we implemented the Dallas Promise. I don't even think we've had the ribbon cutting yet, but we implemented it last year. I received a phone call from district office saying, hey, you want to go to Tennessee? And I'm like, not particularly, but what's going on? Been there, done that, checked it off the bucket list, what's going on? And they're like, well, you know, the chancellor wants a group of us to go down and talk to the Tennessee Promise folks, talk to the commissioner and talk to Tennessee Promise and kind of see how it's done. Because our foundation had a study done and they realized that through our Rising Star program, we're not spending near the money we've raised and we can afford to do some different things. Okay, it was summertime, but okay. So we went down there, talked to some folks, and basically witnessed the inner workings of the Tennessee Promise. We knew we were doing the Guided Pathways piece. So we were basically trying to close the loop on all of this student success work. So we flew back, made our recommendations. We have been working with Commit on the front end of the Dallas Promise to work with high schools, and we launched the Promise. So this March 31st, students had to complete certain things, in order to truly be considered a promised student. The next step is that they have to be enrolled by July 31st. Now, for those of you who aren't familiar with the Promise programs really are a last dollar scholarship piece. So this is the way I sell it. If we commit, if you do these things, whatever they are, we commit to using our resources to finding money for you to go to school, whether it be federal financial aid, state financial aid, scholarships, or whatever. If we cannot do that, then our foundation will provide the money for you to go to school, up to a certain amount. Okay? That's really what the Promise is about. Tennessee Promise works the same way, except the state legislature designated money for the Promise. We're just doing it as a district via our foundation. Okay? So we had 9,000 graduating seniors commit to the Promise last year, okay? And it has dwindled down because there are some students who have decided not to come to us. They think they're gonna go somewhere else. They couldn't follow through with completing the FAFSA. Just numerous reasons why they couldn't complete. And so we are to the point now where we have a pretty good cohort of students who are planning to enter with us in the fall. Okay? This is, I won't say it's a pilot because it's very live. It's very live. There's a lot going on there. But again, you can see how this benefits the guided pathways work. You know, because these Promise students, that's part of it. They have to choose a pathway. They can't come in and be undecided. They can't come in and flail around for a minute. They can change pathways, but they have to do something. They have to declare something and at least start. And also, our relationship with Commit has worked well for us because they are in the high schools, working with the high schools to make sure that these students are as close to what we call TSI MET as possible. And TSI is the assessment tool we use to determine college readiness, okay? And that is a huge problem in Dallas. You know, there's so many students who come to us and they're not college ready, as we like to say, they don't get the right score on this assessment. And so Commit is working on our behalf with the high schools to make sure there are mechanisms in place so that these students, when they do come to us for testing, they assess as best as possible so they can jump on a college track as soon as possible and get down with what they need to do. But we do have mechanisms in place to make sure that if a student does not test college ready, we can still accommodate them. Does that answer your question? Okay.
Good afternoon. Thank you for coming.
Sure, thank you for having me.
My name is Alan Stowers, and I've been around long enough to see the college go through several paradigm shifts. I like the one we're on now. We've moved very, given the budget, where we embrace diversity, equity, and inclusion. And for one that's been around for a while, it's about time.
Mm-hmm.
Also, we have a union. There's that imbalance here that's around the country between full-time and part-time.
Mm-hmm.
Stop it.
Okay.
What has been some of your experiences with contract, pro and con with, I guess this might be a couple of questions, tenure, and working directly with you?
Well, first of all, I've taught since 1998 at community colleges as well as state colleges and universities. I was part of an experiment, and I now know that's what it was, at CSN, where I was an administrator placed on a 50% tenure track faculty position. That's not possible, by the way. Don't fall for that. That's not possible. I ended up doing 100% of my administrative responsibilities, and then the other 50% was teaching. So I was working 150% of the time. I then asked the president, I said, you know, I have to pull back. I need to do one or the other. And so I did that, but his response was, well, you wanted to teach. And I'm like, I did, and you threw me right in there, and that's great. But ever since then, I've carried a teaching load. At that college, I was also one of the founding senators of the Administrative Faculty Alliance, which was supported by the Nevada Faculty Alliance. The unique thing about CSN is that the union, there isn't a union that negotiates on behalf of faculty, but they do have a faculty alliance, and faculty has full tenure. Just like university faculty, they have full tenure. So they were very supportive of we administrators who were in limbo. Basically, we were stuck between faculty classified, had state representation and a state union, and the people in the middle had nothing. And so we formed that Administrative Faculty Alliance, and when we first talked to the then president about it, he basically told us we were just a bunch of disgruntled administrators. And so as we began to share facts with him, he realized that maybe he needed to back off that statement just a little bit. And he's like, okay, let's do it. And so we formulated the Administrative Faculty Alliance. When I was in California, I was part of a classified union. Los Rios Community College, classified, and something, RCEAFT, something like that, which negotiated with the district on our behalf as well. Know that I do know that there is a place for shared governance, and I know why unions exist. The mission, as with all things, has shifted. You're having different discussions. It's not so much anymore about the blatant things that used to happen for faculty and staff. There are other things that we need to discuss. And so this assures that we make sure that there's a forum to have these discussions. So I have been part of unions, bargaining unions. I've been a founding member of one, and I do recognize that they are still necessary.
Good afternoon. My name is Stephen Coates-White. I'm one of the counselors here. In 2016, El Centro College was the site of a pretty horrific event on campus.
Absolutely.
5 police officers shot, 1 sniper killed. A community-based protest. And I'm curious, as the VP there at that time, what were the lessons learned in that story that unfolded that can make you an effective president here?
Well, before that, let me back up really quickly, because there's a lot that's been shared about that isn't necessarily accurate, but it hits more home. While I was in Nevada, I sat on the Citizens Review Board for the Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department. And for those of you that aren't familiar with Metro, they're huge. I mean, you have like $1 billion budget and some other things that are just massive, but you can imagine being in Southern Nevada. And part of that meant going through the police academy, Citizens Police Academy, for 6 months. So I made the cut that weren't tased, which was a good thing. They would not allow us to be tased, and I was very happy about that. But everything else was, pretty on point. So we even talked about the crisis management piece. Well, fast forward to a couple of years ago at El Centro College. Recognized that El Centro College was just in the wrong place at the wrong time. It was not about us, okay? And, excuse me, people were protesting. We are downtown Dallas. I mean, literally 801 Main Street, okay? And Main Street is where everyone protests. Because, again, I can walk, well, maybe from there to the end of this building, and I'm at the JFK Memorial. Happens all the time, right? This particular time, and at the time I was living downtown. I left the building literally about 6:10, and I think everything broke loose about 7. And I went home. Protesters passed by my window because I lived off of Main and Accreditation, and I heard this racket, but they were protesters, and it happens all the time, so I didn't think anything of it. And then I get a text from one of my employees. Oh my gosh, one of our employees is locked in the wellness center. They're on lockdown. And I'm like, what are you talking about? Well, I turn on the TV and I see all this news, and there was so much speculation out there. You can't, fact from fiction, you really didn't know what was going on at that point in time. But we, as the executive team, immediately went into huddle mode. We all started texting and emailing and calling, immediately tapped into the district as far as communications were concerned, and began strategizing what we were going to do. But first we had to get the facts together. We just didn't know, because we recognized it wasn't about us. It was in the evening. going on. Fortunately, it was around finals time for one of our summer terms, so there weren't that many people in the building. It wasn't one of our bustling days, thank goodness. And this person who decided to open fire on all these police officers, some of whom were Dallas area rapid transit police officers, and just started literally murdering them. I mean, matter of fact, I would say an hour after everything broke loose, someone sent me a video. Some random person on the roof was videoing from their phone and sent it to one of us, and we all got it. So we were able to witness some things we didn't need to see. But basically, this person was cornered by the police, and it can happen very quickly on any college campus. Looked around, recognized he had been in Centro College once before, took an automatic weapon, shot out the glass, and ran into the building, hoping he could get away because Dallas PD had him cornered. He then went through the library area, found a perch, and shot out windows and began shooting people on Elm Street, which is on the opposite side. Imagine the damage control. Our college is shut down. It has been seized. At this point, it was determined to be a terrorist situation. And when that happens, hands off. You just kind of sit down and shut up somewhere because there's nothing you can do. So after hours and hours, we're texting, we're communicating, we're saying, okay, what happens next? What classes are scheduled? We went into just a high communication mode. And and I don't even remember how many days it was now, they decided to send a bomb in to basically deal with this individual. And there's a lot of controversy around that. And we were thinking, it'll blow up our college. Oh my God, this is traumatic. Our students were traumatized because they love El Centro. They love that college. And the first thing they did was took it personally. They're like, okay, what do we do? What do we do? So my message to them as a student services person is that you didn't do anything. This person just decided to try and run away and run through our college. We kept constant communication. We have an excellent student life and student government, and they are constantly in communication with students via, many mechanisms. We have a decent social media, but as a team, we were right in there with each other, and of course, in communication with district. As you all know, they eventually blew the assailant up in our building, and it did rip out a couple of floors and all of that. We had people trying to sneak in our building to see where this person met their demise. All of that, you have to manage. I did press conferences. The president did press conferences because there's always someone in your face with a microphone. But you stay calm. We had a place to go, which was our Bill J. Priest Institute. So the following Monday, we were set up and ready to serve students. It's what we had to do. Most of the service that was provided was explaining to students that it wasn't about them. Everything's going to be okay. Your classes are fine. You can do your business at Bill J. Priest. You must stay away from the building. And our building was under siege by the FBI for a little over a week. We had a welcome back party, not only for students, but for faculty and staff, just to make people feel more comfortable being in the building. And I have to say that I actually had a staff member who was trapped in our wellness center, and I was very, very proud of the professional development that we offer, because crisis management was one of those things that I knew my student development staff needed. And so I made them go through active shooter training. Absolutely, I did. And this particular staff member was working late and actually had a student worker in the wellness center with him. And the first thing he starts texting my deans and I, and he locks it, he puts it on lockdown, shut down the lights, he'll calm the student down. There were rumors that the shooter was in the parking structure, which is right next to the wellness center. Panic. But he did exactly, like second nature, what he needed to do. At one point in the evening, about 2 o'clock in the morning, after this happened, the students began having panic attacks because the police wouldn't let anyone do anything. You couldn't go anywhere. People, their books, their cars, all of that, they were stuck without them for about a week. And the staff member really held it down. We have a student counseling center that engaged immediately. Matter of fact, the Saturday after this happened, meaning I think it happened Thursday or Friday, the following Saturday, we had student counselors, or counselors, not only ours at El Centro, but across the district, ready to serve students at our West Campus and on the phone. So, there's a reason we practice these things, and we have to, as administrators, we have to think about these things happening. It's just a reality. We have to make sure our college community is prepared, not afraid, but prepared, so that they know what to do. And I was proud of my staff and other staff and my peers for shifting into gear and doing everything that we needed to do to make sure that our students were okay and that they understood their college was okay and that we would be back. That was a long answer, but that was a big event. So we are actually doing a presentation at the AACC conference at the end of this month about that particular crisis and how we managed it and what we learned. So to answer your question, we learned that just be transparent. We have to have these, again, courageous conversations with the college community so that when these things happen, we can be as prepared as possible. We need to pay attention. We need not to assume certain things. It doesn't mean to stereotype people and profile people and do all of these things, but if you see something, say something, okay, to the appropriate authorities. Make sure we have the appropriate public safety necessary for our campuses, and make sure those people are engaged and ready to observe. Just a number of things, and work collaboratively, communicate. Our communication is so funny because there are a couple people on the team, it's like we probably didn't want to talk to each other most of the time, but the minute this happened, we just gelled together and just started communicating, throwing ideas out there. The silos came down, we all have silos, and we were making recommendations for each other, helping each other. I can take this class over here, let's do this, can you accommodate that kind of thing. And that's a true community. That's a true college community, and we were invested in making sure that our students were okay.
Hi, Dr. Crawford. Welcome to our campus. This is Harris. I teach accounting. I'm accounting faculty. My question to you, being a candidate for this position, is what is your experience, if you could describe that, dealing with students or students who have challenges, and how have you bridged that gap as an administrator and as a leader to help them succeed, and also being available, the two-part of the question, also being available to faculty, staff, administrators, and most importantly, students. Can you give examples of that, please?
First of all, I have to say, one reason why I put in the bio is that after a national search, I was selected to be the VP at El Centro College. When I walked in the room, it felt like a presidential search. There were maybe 20 people in the room, most of whom were faculty. And so I always say that the faculty hired me to be VP of Student Services and Enrollment Management because they were fully engaged in the process. So I have always had an open line of communication with faculty, of course, especially when we're talking about enrollment management and introducing a new concept to a college that hadn't really understood what that meant. You can't pull that off without having those conversations. The same thing with students. As I said, we have an amazing student life. That was one thing that attracted me to El Centro College, is how well student life was put together and how they're focused on civic engagement and productive things and not, picking at the administration about the color of the buildings, that kind of thing. And I've had that experience as well. Those students are truly focused, and many of our students have actually gone to Washington to serve as interns and to provide input, and I'm so proud of that particular piece. So having those conversations with students, as an example, and I'll give you one, the students were actually going to do a sit-in because they were not happy about something that happened. And one of the leaders came to me and said, I just want to let you know that we're planning to do a sit-in. We're going to be down there at 8 o'clock, and you have to recognize our building is like an office building. It used to be a department store. And so a sit-in on our first floor means it's shut down. There's just no way. And so I had a conversation with this person. I'm like, what is going on? How did I miss this? Like, she's like, no, it's been a long time coming. You know, you knew this is problematic. So we talked through it, and I talked to that particular group and helped the president avoid a sit-in. It didn't mean that their points weren't valid. It just meant that I redirected them as far as a more constructive way to solve the problem, which really ended up not being a problem. The issue was that they were not being engaged. If we had bothered to engage them, we would have known what was going on. You know, and it got out of control. And so that's why that consistent engagement is important, especially with students. I walk the hallways, you know, and talk to students. I participate in their activities. I engage with faculty in all that we do in student services, especially when it comes to enrollment management. And I have few administrators within my division. There are few, but we are not administratively top-heavy. Okay, and that came along with that reorganization I mentioned earlier and providing upward mobility for folks. Top heavy doesn't do anything for me, to be honest. I need to make sure things get done and get done for students. So that's one example of engaging administratively. Over the years, I've had to engage other administrators. I've had to separate some administrators from service. And other things like that, and that's just a part of the job. It is not the go-to, but you do a lot of work before you even think about things like that. So I am, to answer your question, I'm engaged with the college community as a whole. Everybody knows who I am, everybody knows where my office is, and everybody knows that they can pretty much time when I'm going to walk around a particular corner. And just a humorous aside, we have an area called, we call it the Rotunda. And again, in this building, if there are a group of students and they're just having a basic conversation, it goes all the way up to like the 4th floor. So depending on how loud they are, you can't hear in your classroom. So I deliberately passed that area. Okay, guys, keep it down. You know, this is. And I walked by the area one day and they got really quiet. And then as I got to the elevator, I heard one of the students say, "That's the vice president of students. Shh, be quiet." I felt bad, but at the same time, I was like, "That's right, be quiet." So, you know, they know, and they know they can come to me with issues. Again, I started the first counseling center that Centro College ever had because I recognized that we have students with great, great need. All they needed was just that little bit to help them through, whether it be finals, midterms. You know, we have a lot of students who are alcoholics, who are recovering drug addicts, who just have family problems, whatever else. And they needed someone to talk to. So I hired the first professional counselor, licensed professional counselor at that campus. I converted a position into that, scraped some money together to do that. We found them a location. We now have a person and a half, which is still not enough. But someone just told me they don't know how they managed to get through all of the years that they did without a true professional counselor for students. We have a health center, of course, and we have beefed up efforts there because we know that sometimes that's the only help a student can get health-wise is from that center, and it's because they're a student. Does that answer your question? Okay, thank you.
Well, welcome, Dr. Crawford, and that was a perfect segue to my question. I'm Dan Johnson, I'm Dean of Student Life. And my question you mentioned earlier about students, and students as being the reason that we're all here. Mm-hmm. We talked about student experience and we talked about student success. Mm-hmm. So I was just wondering, how do you incorporate student voice, which is also important, and student concerns and student participation into helping form the policy and practices of the college?
Well, it is my firm belief, and you can ask anyone. Every VP has committees that report to them, and I insist upon there being student representation on these committees, as well as what you would call classified. We call them PSSA employees. faculty, as well as administrators. Because we do all of this for them. And so if we're not listening to them, if we don't include them in the process, then we have a problem. Even our budget discussions, okay? They need to be involved. Let's talk guided pathways. We actually vetted some of the pathways with students. We had focus groups across the district, and we shared the information and basically said, what do you think about this? And we got positive feedback. The students were like, well, this is great. When can I start this? And I want one of these, and that kind of thing. And they made recommendations that we listened to because the pathways are for them, okay? If there was something that wasn't clear, we made sure that we made them clear. So as a leader, and I said this earlier, it makes my job easier. It is not my job to sit in a room and make a bunch of decisions. You don't always have time to garner consensus, okay? Especially in an emergency situation. Sometimes you don't have that time, but let's just be honest. Most of the time we do have time to have discussions with others outside of our head, okay? And we need to make sure to do that. And substantiate the decisions that are made. That's another thing. We're not transparent enough, in my opinion. Many of us are not transparent enough so that people can see how we came to our conclusions. You know, and we're not willing to explain that, and I don't know if it's because we don't think we have to or what, but we have to, because these decisions affect everyone. And sometimes things don't go our way. But because I would like to believe that we have a level of emotional intelligence necessary to lead others and are in control of minds, that we work through it.
It is now a little after 2:30, so we would like to give the last 30 minutes to focus on students and their specific questions for Dr. Crawford. So we have questions from students.
Hi, good afternoon, Dr. Crawford. My name is Misty Louie.
Hi.
This is my third full quarter here at the college, and I come from the perspective of a veteran. And so I did 6 years in the Air Force. Stella Cruz is my English professor right now. He's also a vet too. And I have 2 questions. They're not really parted. They're 2 separate questions. The first one is, what is your experience with giving vets a very different support than the rest of the students? Like, what kind of resources have you dealt with, or partnerships that you brought to your experience to get the support for the vet students? And then the other question I have is, in being a vet student here at this college, I get first priority, like 2 days early to pick my classes with my advisors, and that has not gone to plan at all in the last 3 quarters. So for us, it's like the advisor can give us that early time to get our classes set, and then with budget cuts, those classes most likely get canceled. And so then I have to be at like the tail end of a waiting list for another one that might fit my schedule. So it was supposed to kind of help me, but at the end, it didn't help me.
Okay. First of all, no, and I say this proudly wherever I go. I am the daughter of a disabled veteran. And I am the daughter of a disabled veteran who was a veteran during times when the military was segregated. So vets are near and dear to my heart. I watched him struggle with war-related issues. You know, I don't want to overuse PTSD for many, many years, and untreated. You know, we managed it somehow. He managed it somehow. He still managed to raise and feed 10 kids between him and my mom, and have a successful career. You know, and retiring early. So you know, that is something that's near and dear to my heart. While I was at College of Southern Nevada, I opened the first veteran center for that college. I worked with academic affairs to secure the space. We took 2 classrooms offline, and we put together a veteran center. And that veteran center is still open. And it was supposed to be a place where vets can come and do what they need to do, whether it be study, whether it meant having meetings with their VA reps, whether it meant advising. It was their veteran center. As far as the registration process is concerned, here, you know, one of the things that I would love to do is, and as part of the evaluative process, is challenging the process. and asking people to reevaluate what we've always done. What we've always done doesn't always fit. So one thing that folks who send the emails know, that at the bottom of my email, I have a mantra that I've carried with me for quite some time. And it says student success. We plan, we implement, we evaluate, and we improve. So that means that the status quo is not always the same. We don't do the same things just because it's the way it's always been done. So veterans are absolutely on my radar for various reasons. I used VA benefits to go to college my first few years, again, because of my dad. I was telling someone earlier that we were pretty much raised, and I hate to say this, but in crisis mode. And I'll give you a real quick example. When I moved from California to the Nevada desert, to my dad, it wasn't Las Vegas. It was the Nevada desert, okay? And I started getting all these little packages in the mail. And they were things from the base, you know, the dry goods and the collapsible saws and all of this stuff. And I called him, I was like, why are you sending me all of this stuff? And he says, well, you just moved to the desert. And what if your car breaks down between here and there? You're going to need to be able to survive. And I taught you how to survive. So and I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm 3 hours away, okay? But I love that. My dad has since passed on, but I love that. And I instilled that in my kids. That was just who he was. And it made it great for me. I had an adventurous childhood, and all because of his military experience. The flip side of that is I wish my dad had had a veteran center, a true veteran center, to engage as part of his academic experience. To give the attention that was needed, because he would have been able to handle some of those issues. You know, you go to fight for the country and then you're segregated, you're divided up, but you're all out there willing to die, but you're divided up. Can you imagine the emotional experience? You know, and on top of that, I don't know how familiar you all are with culture, but my father was a Creole from southern Louisiana, so they really couldn't figure out who he was. So there was always this misplacement and these judgments, but he still insisted upon fighting for the country because it's what he believed in. So imagine that, coming back injured, losing a limb, and you still forge forward. You know, so I have a tremendous amount of respect because there's him times thousands who are in the same situation. So again, that's always on my radar.
Good afternoon, Mr. Crawford.
Hello.
Jeffrey Campbell here. One of the things that you mentioned at the very beginning was in reference to enrollment. Here in South Seattle and within our district, between the 3 campuses, we've noticed declining enrollment over the last 5 to 7 years, adversely having effects on our budget here, not only at South, but within our district as well, and across the state allowances from our legislators. And you mentioned that you have worked on enrollment at your previous positions, and one of the key words I heard you use was innovation. What have you found were some innovative methods for enrollment and boosting those numbers, and not just boosting those numbers, but retaining and not falling into attrition decline?
I'm glad you asked that question because experience has taught me a couple things. You can't throw money at an enrollment problem, number one. While I was at CSN, I think I talked about the fact that we grew 12 to 15% per year, but there was a cost to that. At the time, we were funded for enrollment. We weren't necessarily funded for momentum points and student success and all those things, so all we had to do was dig up a bunch of students and get them enrolled, right? And to be honest with you, we did not know what happened to those students after the fact because making data-informed decisions was not part of the conversation at the time. Well, fast forward, enrollment hits a decline. We're looking for students to be successful. We're now gauged by momentum points and student success and graduation, and the result was dismal. And so that college is still trying to recover from that. But at the time, we threw money at a situation. Fast forward to where I am currently. If you look out in our enrollment, El Centro College's enrollment is actually 1% down. It's less than 1% down, but it should be. And let me tell you what I mean by that. We have had to look at data more. And that was one thing I was asked to do along the lines of enrollment management when I showed up there, is to teach people what enrollment management meant and how to make data-informed decisions. But that then meant looking at the data and retrieving the data, and they were not accustomed to that, let's just be honest. So I'm Chicken Little running around talking about, look at the numbers, look at the numbers, look at what's going on here. And they're like, what are you talking about? We have students in our classroom. So as we begin to have those discussions and really break down the budget conversation and show people how our funds are generated, they begin to realize, oh, okay, so just because I have a bunch of people in my seat, it doesn't necessarily mean that I'm going to get a certain amount, that the college is going to get a certain amount of money for these students. That is correct. Oh, so if these people don't complete, there's some money we don't receive, right? Absolutely. So it has required us to be very transparent, and I have to be honest with you, via the enrollment management process, I pushed them against the wall, many people against the wall, had to, because you recognize when you look at numbers, I'm a design for you, that there's just a lot that we do that isn't sustainable. Now, we had a business officer that really wasn't concerned with that in the past, and he has since parted ways with the college, and we have a new business officer who is all about numbers, and I love her. We have hour-long phone conversations about the swirlers, about classes, and one of the things that she asked me to support her in impressing upon instruction was, can we have a minimum seat requirement, please? Unless you justify why. Because there are some courses that you can't get a certain number of students in because of the nature of the program. We understand that. But we got some pushback, but then when we started showing the numbers, they're like, oh, so I'm basically teaching for free. Yep, you got it. You know, so it's a lot of information that needs to be shared, data, good data, and we are right now at the point where we're making decisions about certain things. And again, we're looking at the dollars and cents, but we're also looking at our programs. We're looking at if we have to transition faculty to other courses, which at this point we don't. You know, faculty, that's one thing about community college faculty, and I'm saying this because I truly believe it. We have some very creative and educated folks in our faculty ranks. And just because they're teaching one thing doesn't mean they can't teach another. So that option is not on the table, but we have also brought them to the table and shown them this information and said, okay, well, how can you make this run? Can you make this program run in this box? These are our parameters. This is all we've got. How can you make this program work in this box? We're listening. You know, and that's what needs to happen. They're the practitioners. Same thing with facilities. You know, same box. This is your box facilities. How can you keep this place running with these parameters? Because this is all we've got. You know, and they have come up with some very creative solutions that I would have never come up with. Because I'm not a facilities person. I am not the content area expert. And I think that's one thing we fail to do in higher ed is respect each other for being that content area expert. We don't listen enough to each other. We don't listen to students. I mean, some of us do, but oftentimes we don't listen enough. And so I think that's important. So as I said, every committee that I put together that I'm the executive sponsor for, there are students on those committees. Because I want to hear what they have to say.
How you doing, Dr. Crawford?
Hello.
My name is Ricardo Singh Banks. I'm the Inclusion and Diversity Officer for the student government. Aside from numbers and aside from just basically logistical stuff, we as students, we understand. We as everybody who's a student at school know that there's only so much time in the day. Our administrators are already tied up nonstop doing a lot of stuff. Going through your resume, I see you had a lot of work with just financial in general. What's your experience with taking time out of your day and getting involved with our students? We know that there's only so much time in the day, but especially as a student government, we love meeting our staff and wherever your family or at school. But could you give us a couple examples on time?
Yeah, as I said previously, I'm always engaged with the students. Our student life is very active, and they do report up through me, and they always just kind of put me on the agenda which is okay. I just help give me check my calendar and make sure. And I love that because it actually gives me a break. It does to get up and engage, with someone other than this report, this paper, district, whatever. It gives me a break and it refocuses me on why I'm doing this and why we're doing this service work. Get your cardio in, right?
Hello, my name is Tang Mai. I'm the Vice President of the Student Government, and I be in the first generation, so I get a lot of help from the TRIO program. And as you know, that the TRIO is a really successful program that we have at South. So my question is, what is your experience working with the TRIO program, and do you have any plan to support the program?
Yeah, we lost our TRIO program in Centro before I showed up. But I do believe in the upward bound programs, the TRIO programs, because they actually model the student support services we should be offering to our students. It's getting hot. Can I take a break? Can I take a quick break? Sure. Okay. I do apologize for having to take that break. I really do have stamina. It's just this light is right on me. Should just go and jogging or something like that. Thank you so much.
Okay, it's still 7 minutes.
We still have time. I have 5 minutes to make up for, so let's do it.
Hello, I'm Sandy. I am Secretary in Academic Programs. When you talk about places you've lived and been, why Seattle? It's quite a climate change. What do you like about our city and area?
Well, the places that I've lived have actually made Seattle look even better. I lived in the desert for 16 and a half years, so you can imagine. And we traveled a lot when I was a child, and so I got the opportunity to visit Seattle and Vancouver and other places all over the country, from the back of a station wagon or a Winnebago, however you want to look at it. But I was sharing with the group earlier that I'm at a point in my life and in my career to where, and I've said this repeatedly today, I can do what I want. I have 2 adult children. They are 29 and 27. They have their careers. They, have finished school, and they did this when I was in Nevada. One went this way, one went the other way. I pointed out the studio light piece because my son is in that business. And so, having your house lit up with these, I'm used to that, for whatever reason. It was a great house to film in, I guess. And I'm just at that point where I can be where I want to be and serve where I want to serve. The only requirement is that there be a metropolitan airport nearby. That's what they have said to me. It's still on. There we go. There we go. And so that's my agreement, is that they can get to me from wherever they are. But this college, and hopefully you can see this by my talk and other things, that I have strengths that can really help this college get through this bumpy time and prepare for what's to come. Not if, but when. My strong suit is creating sustainable entities, working collaboratively with people to make sure that happens. It does not come out of my head alone. Being transparent about the process as a leader. If you're a leader, it's so much easier to do our jobs if we are more transparent with our processes and our decision making. I truly believe this is service. And again, I just feel as though it would be a good match. And Seattle's great. There's nothing wrong with Seattle. I do understand that there are living wage issues. We have the same issues in Dallas, and that's why we've engaged in some of the initiatives that we've engaged in as a district. So I can speak to that. I do have distant cousins here in Seattle, but it's a great place. And how did I end up in Dallas? I did my homework and recognized, okay, I can play to my strengths there. And the climate is much better than living in the desert. And so I feel the same way about Seattle. Dallas is not bad, but this climate's a lot better for my liking. And again, coming back out west is not bad either. I was born and raised in the West.
Thank you. Hi again, Dr. Crawford. I'm Erin Barson. You've mentioned a couple of times having some courageous conversations on your campuses. And I was hoping you could give us some examples of courageous conversations around keeping equity at the focus of our work. That's what we have said is why we're doing guided pathways. And so I was hoping you'd talk a little bit about how you've helped colleges do that on their campus.
Okay. I'm going to separate that conversation from guided pathways for a minute. But we recognize. Oh, okay. He keeps going in and out. Okay, great. Thank you. I feel like I'm on a college flashback. I used to back up saying for rent. So anyway, yes, I'm holding the mic is common to me. Anyway, could you repeat the question? Equity. Conversations around equity, absolutely. Every year, the division of SSEM, or Student Services and Enrollment Management, has professional development. And I let the staff choose the theme, but we shut down for a day and have a conference, if you will. And our theme last year had to do with equity. Looking at the numbers, and I don't just make, data-informed decisions only. We look at other things and recognizing that, sure, Centro is diverse. We're over 50% diverse. There's no question. We're a Hispanic serving institution, but about 2/3 of our student population are from some diverse ethnic background. That doesn't speak to equity. That doesn't speak to the student experience. The flip side of that is we have a faculty who does not represent, I'm just going to be honest, it's a matter of statistical fact, they do not represent our student populations. So my question was, how's that working out? Okay, and that then leads us to the discussion of equity. Now I understand everybody needs a job, and we can't go around replacing whole staffs because the demographic of our area has changed. However, I'm sure that anyone who works with me will tell you that I work extra hard to make sure that when we hire, that we have gone above and beyond to make sure that our pools are diverse, okay, in every way, and can have those discussions. I also promote equity. I actually am one of the first people to bring in a speaker that focuses on Black Minds Matter, and it's not just about being Black. Okay, it's diverse minds matter as well. Jay Lickwood, you all may have heard of him. I actually brought him to my professional development day to have a conversation about that. Instruction did the same thing. I've had folks come in from the University of Texas to talk about equity because it is an issue. How can we assure that that person in front of the classroom or that person helping the student in enrollment services or in advising is truly relating or working with that student from the right place? Now again, we can't go around replacing entire staffs to make them look like the student demographic because frankly, the way our communities change every 5 years, we'll have turnover in staff. But we need to know that the people who work with us will bend over backwards to make sure we're reflective of our community, and where we are not, make sure that the people in place, again, can have those discussions that are well educated and well versed on the idea of equity and inclusion, and that our students don't feel disenfranchised when they're in the classroom. You don't have to look like me to learn something from me, but if you come at me with a microaggression and just assume that I don't know something or I had to have cheated on that test because I got an A and on the last one I got a C, then we have a problem. And so those are the kinds of equity discussions that we are having. And we've incorporated them into our Achieving the Dream goals as well to ensure that we continue having these conversations and holding people accountable. Now, how can the numbers, Chicken Little with the numbers, how can I make sure that happens, or force the conversation, or make sure it happens, well, let's start looking at why students drop classes. Why are we losing students at a certain point? Why are students avoiding? Why do we have so many swirlers for a class that we offer online and they're going somewhere else? What's going on? Okay? And we need to continually have those conversations in order to assure equity. It really, you know, people are like, well, I'm so tired of hearing about black minds and diverse minds and diversity and all of that. But it's not just about that. No one wants to have a microaggression applied to them, regardless of what you look like. You want to be judged based on the content of your character and how you have performed. And unfortunately, in this society, there are still people who have a problem with that. And so that's one thing I think administrators absolutely have to take charge forward and say, okay, we need to look at this. What's happening out there? Talk to the students. Let's survey students when they drop. Let's look at what's going on where. Let's compartmentalize this and ask some of those tough questions and have those courageous conversations. And it's not easy, you know, especially when you are trying to make sure that you don't get that vote of no confidence, and all it takes is just a few people to do that, and oops, look what happened. It's not about that. You know, and I have worked with people who they're concerned about that, so they don't want to have the courageous conversation. And it's like, but you're here for students. You're here to educate people, so why not to inflate your ego? And sometimes you have to make tough decisions and have conversations and explain why. You know, and I'm willing to do that. And that may be a double-edged sword, but we've got to step outside of our comfort zone in higher ed to make it through these bumpy times. Okay. Hopefully that answers your question.
Okay, so it is just a few minutes after 3, and Dr. Crawford, you are not done. You have, well, you need to go to our district. We already talked about that and so forth.
We're going to the dark side, right?
So first of all, thank you so very much. And I mentioned before how South is a fun-loving group of people, and we're very proud of who we are, and we like to do things differently. So we have a little memento for you for your visit. You know, so something that you can take with you and have there and show off in Texas and so forth.
Right. Put it up on my desk. Thank you. I do love something.
And so this concludes this open forum. If you missed any part of it, of course, you can go and see the taped interview. And then please, if you can go ahead and comment either on a written form or else online. And then our next and our final open forum will be on the 23rd, which is a Monday, 23rd of April. And it's going to be the same time, the same location, 1:30 to 2:30 up to 3 o'clock. But thank you so very much for coming.